Hello everyone and thank you for joining us for Cleanse, Purge, Kill, Twonkhammer Entertainment's Warhammer 40k, The Eternal Crusade podcast. I think I just added that in there. I don't really care. We're here. We're doing that. I am today's host, Rode. Sam will not be joining us today because he's on babysitting duty, so his attention's there. But with me today, we have our usual co-host, Michael. Michael, how is the UK?
It is dark right now.
Is it dark?
It's nighttime.
I hear it's really old, too.
It is old and full of culture and civilization.
I wouldn't go that far.
Like the frontier.
Don't mind the frontier. It's awesome. And also joining us today, fresh from a hurricane. Oh, how was the hurricane?
It was windy and very, very loud.
On the bright side, you have power, internet, and are alive.
What can you ask more?
Lots of food, enormous amounts of money, and, well, worshippers. Thousands and thousands of them.
That would be nice, wouldn't it?
It would be. It'd be fantastic. But we're not here to talk about my little fantasies. We're here to talk about my speculation on a game. Or everyone's, I guess. I guess I shouldn't just include
Or your
myself
fantasies about a game.
Or my games that are including fantasy. I don't know. Space fantasy. But yeah, here we are. We're here to talk about the Eternal Crusade. So let's get to that. You guys done anything interesting in the last week that we should report on, or should we just move on?
I made more videos. I made another Astronomicon video, so you can go over to my YouTube channel and check that out for more Eternal Crusade information that we don't cover here.
We should cover here. That's what you're here for.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, you know. Look,
how many shows do you release a week anyway?
I try to aim at the moment, because I'm really busy, I try to aim for at least like 3 YouTube videos. I'm aiming at the moment because Eternal Crusade has so much content coming out that I'll probably be doing an Astronomicon episode at least once a week for the time being. And I run, obviously, the Star Wars: The Old Republic weekly show as well, which I'm behind on and I need to get on tomorrow.
You really should.
Yes.
Busy schedule.
Yep.
Indeed. What about you, Ol? Aside from surviving a hurricane, what else interesting have you done?
Not that much, actually. I've been spending my time listening to Michael's lovely voice and getting caught up on the Astronomicon.
Oh, good. So you listened to the interview that we'll be talking about today, then?
Yep. 3 times.
Awesome.
Oh, good. You know, it's kind of sad. You've listened to it 3 times. I've listened to it upwards of 9 times now, and Michael hasn't listened to it aside from when he did it.
Nope, never. I don't listen to my stuff ever.
That's just
can't.
I know. I haven't been able to listen to our podcast from last week. Just can't stand the thought of listening to my own voice.
No, I can't. I'm
you
not
get used
as
to it, trust me.
egotistical as that.
I listen to every single show our network produces, so at least once.
Yeah, you're on all of them, aren't you?
I am in all of them. Yeah, I'm a narcissist. That's all it really is. I want to hear my own voice, which is why I'm talking now. I'm glad you could reinforce that flaw in my armor. Thanks for that.
No problem. That's why I'm here.
But anyway, as for me, as if we're not talking about me enough, I've been being narcissistic. No, really, I've been producing several shows. I am now on another week of vacation, which means I'm going to get absolutely nothing done all week whatsoever, period. That's how it should be.
I can attest to this.
Yeah, exactly. See? He knows.
I have to say, I'm quite pleased at the setup. We've got 2 Europeans versus 1 American today. I'm liking the odds here.
I think all that really means is it takes 2 Europeans to equal out an American.
I don't think so.
And even then, that's kind of like an awkward scale because, well, the Dane obviously adds more.
Thank you.
All right. Before we start tearing each other apart, I guess it's time we should go into our contact information. Then we'll actually move on to the interesting stuff in the show.
Yes.
So, if you'd like to get a hold of us, you can go to cleansepurgekill.com, all one word, or twonkhammer.com, twitter.com/cpkpodcast, twitter.com/twonkhammer, facebook.com/twonkhammer, and our YouTube, youtube.com/twonkhammerent. You can also rate, hate, and subscribe on iTunes. We are there now, so you should follow that, and that will really help us out. Our goal is to be #1. It probably won't happen, but unless you guys help us out, it certainly won't. And, of course, if you'd like to help out the website in any way, because this isn't a free show to do, you can do so by going to twonkhammer.com/audible to get your free 30-day trial, 1 free token for any audiobook of your choice. And if you do so within the next few days, you will actually be able to cash in that 1 token for 2 books. Unfortunately, it's part of a limited selection, and most of them are vampire and werewolf love novels, but there are a few good choices in there, such as Mogworld, which I've been thoroughly enjoying over this weekend. Yeah. Also, another thing, I thought there were some Warhammer 40k books on there. I went to look at one and get one this week. Apparently, there aren't. So maybe I seen them and they were taken off, or maybe I'm just on drugs.
I know they've never been. They're not in Europe.
I did find...
But I've been looking it up, and I don't think the Black Library has been handing out the licenses for doing Audible books.
Well, I found some on iTunes, though.
Yeah, I found some on iTunes. There are a few on iTunes, I know that. But there's none on...
It's happened before.
Audible.
So there's
there you go.
But
there's other good stuff.
Yeah.
There is lots of good stuff on there.
There's certainly a lot of good books. But anyway, I guess it's time for us to go across the Vox, which I guess is my funny way of saying into the news. Or maybe I could relate it to what I found in the forums, because that's pretty much all we have this week.
Yes.
So, first off, if you guys were watching Twitter like I was earlier today, you would have seen Miguel put out a tweet where apparently 2 lucky fans walked into Behavior's office, and that sounds like the setup to a really bad joke. But I guess joke's on us. They got their hands on the game after signing an NDA.
That was all right for them. It was really funny because basically what happened was these 2 guys walked in and they went to the reception, and they basically said they were from London. And so the message came up to Miguel and the people, and they thought it was London, UK, so they thought it was going to be someone from Games Workshop. And they came down, and it was actually London, Ontario. It was just 2 fans, and they were like, yeah, can we come play your game? And they were like, yeah, all right. And they let them in. They signed an NDA, and they played the game, and apparently they loved it. So that's pretty cool. I like that. I'm green with envy that it wasn't me. But I like the fact that they didn't just turn them away. They went, well, you're here. Come up. Let's play.
Well, since you came all that way, I don't exactly know how far London, Ontario is, but I imagine it's more than a brisk drive.
But yeah. I mean, I think that's good. And what's interesting on the forum, on that particular forum thread anyway, is stuff that is talked about later. Miguel put a post out about a secret producer, because he said about they're going to be releasing gameplay footage soon, and they're currently making the video, and they're also going to introduce some more of the team, and a secret producer who is a female, and I think it was said that she's basically the keeper of secrets, and that I think that's kind of a hint onto who it is. Now, it's wild speculation at this point, and I may be completely wrong, but I think it may be Anne Leeswall from Funcom, who was the producer on Secret World. Because I know Miguel used to work at Funcom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And brought some people over from Funcom, so I suspect that it may be her. But might be completely wrong. But I think it's probably likely that it is her.
Okay. Wow. Cool.
So that's pretty cool.
I was thinking you were actually going to allude to the secret writer behind the story that was alluded to in the interview.
No.
All right, then. Fair enough. Aside from that, and this is a pretty brief thing, but in the forums there was a topic about, well, how combat was going to work, which is obviously a big point of interest. And Brett Ellison, during one of his responses, confirmed that friendly fire will be in the game. It's, as he stated, it's pretty much required in an actual tactical war game. And honestly, I'm really, really behind this because I play Battlefield like a madman, and I always play in hard mode, or hardcore, or whatever you want to call it, where, you know, a stray RPG could, instead of killing who you're aiming at, wipe out an entire squad of your own team. And why shouldn't that be true? If you've got explosives and dreadnoughts being shot down from the sky and all that, why can't you kill your own team?
Well, it just makes sense in the long run, especially with the kind of numbers that we're talking about in terms of the game, where it's going to be hundreds of players versus hundreds of players on a single battlefield. the player at the back of the group, it's going to be ridiculous if they're going to be able to shoot through their allies to reach the other team. That's just ridiculous.
Right, absolutely.
So it makes sense from that standpoint. It makes sure that it's skill based and not, you can't just spam fire things. And I think it's a good move, and it's a common sense move. To be honest, it's something that I would have expected from them anyway, and I think most people did. But it's nice to get it confirmed.
Yeah, it really is.
Fantastic. Well, that just means that I'll have to be a little more careful when I send my numerous minions into the field with det packs strapped to them to blow up and wipe out everyone in the vicinity.
And it also means that melee combat is going to get pretty messy.
Yeah, that kind of worries me too, because I really actually do plan on playing an Assault Marine, so if that means I'm going to have to worry about my own team shooting me in the back with some kind of rocket, that could be a problem.
You have to look out where you jump.
Yeah, it's a risky take.
I'll just try to jump behind the enemy a little bit, so maybe jump into the center of their forces and hope for the best. Use them as my shield so I don't get shot in the back. Well, by my own team. Actually, that's probably not a great idea. Plan. Yeah, I don't know about all that. Anyway, so moving forward, we have essentially a dev question of the week, which is going to be, well, our discussion of the week also. This is actually going to be a rough breakdown of Michael's interview with Miguel Caron, which was about a month and a half ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's about 2 months ago now.
2 months ago?
I forget when exactly. Something like that.
Yeah, plenty of next month TMs in that one. Actually, that's what we should have named this episode. Oh, damn. Oh well, here we are. So anyway, we get a brief introduction to who Behavior is, rather than Behavior Interactive. It is Behavior Online Studio, right?
Yes. So basically, Behavior, in a nutshell, the best way to explain it is very similar to EA, and I say similar, I mean in size, not in
corporate structure, not in practice.
Is basically Behavior Interactive have separate divisions, okay? And that is their structure. So, for example, when people often quote what Behavior have done in the past, and what I mean by that is like the movie Shovelware that they've done, they have a separate division for that just does licensed games. They've also produced games that they cannot talk about because they have signed agreements with other publishers or other developers, and they've worked on games that you will never know that they did that.
That's unfortunate, because I would love to see more of what they've done.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously Behavior Online is a brand new studio within the Behavior Interactive group, and it was produced solely for the purpose of building this MMO.
So working with Chris Roberts, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're working on Star Citizen with Chris Roberts, which again, that's pretty big. Because Chris Roberts, he's not known for making things half-assed.
You know that game hit 25 million today?
That's crazy. It's absolutely
and just, I think 4 days ago, it hit its benchmark of 24 million. And today
but it proves the
hit
point.
25.
It proves the point. If you've got a concept that people love, they're willing to pay for it themselves to see it made. And it's one of those things that exactly, and it's one of those things that even if Behavior themselves hadn't done this MMO, because obviously they've got a lot of infrastructure, a lot of resources to put behind this, but if a developer came along, like the team Miguel's got, and said, we want to make this MMO and put it on Kickstarter, for a fact that would have got kickstarted like within a week, easily.
Yeah, for sure.
Like that. And it just proves that, and I like, I like Kickstarter and stuff because I think it gives consumers buying power in the content that they want to see. But regardless of that, back to Behavior. It's good. There's a lot of real big talent and pedigree on that Behavior Online team. I mean, you've got some really intelligent people. You've got people who've worked in the industry for, X number of years. You've got people from all types. So you've got people from Age of Conan, The Secret World, EVE Online. You've got an array of talented people, and it's that kind of thing that made me sit there and go, I feel a lot better about them doing this now.
Better than when you found out they were behind Disney's games?
Yeah. And you know, I actually thought it's interesting because I left that video up there, the original video that I did, that basically said, you know, this is not going to be good because after looking at what titles that are available to view what behaviour's done in the past, I said, you know, this is not going to go well. And then Miguel turned around and went, well, actually, you're wrong. And I was like, well, do you want to do an interview? And he's like, yeah, all right. And then we took it from there. And I was, to be honest, I was happy to be proved wrong. Yeah. That's good, because at the end of the day, that means I win either way. If I'm wrong, I get a fantastic Warhammer 40k game.
Well, it's exactly what you're saying there. You know, a few months before you and I first started talking, we on the band Hammer, Twankhammer Entertainment's Random Gaming Podcast, I had actually brought up a subject on that show where, you know, not just rumors, but where Eternal Crusade was officially announced. I had found their website, you know, and at the time I was pulling all the news for that show of ours. So I found that, I put it in the show, and when everyone else, you know, read it while we were actually talking about it, they seen it live. And I got a lot of great responses from the rest of my crew, you know, where they were excited about this kind of thing coming out. They were looking at the website, they thought it looked awesome. But at that point, there really wasn't any real information. So while we had jokingly talked about at the time maybe having to start up a podcast about that, which, you know, here we are, I wasn't really sold until I started talking to you, which was all about the Old Republic stuff. And then you turned me on to that interview you had because, you know, as I told you before, I don't watch YouTube videos, ever.
Yeah.
So I was never going to look at that. You told me about the interview. I went and ripped the audio from YouTube, listened to it at work, and I think I was only halfway through listening to it before I messaged you on Twitter and said, all right, we got to do something about this.
Yeah. I mean,
this interview sold me.
It was really nice, Miguel, to do that, and it's you know, it's one of my biggest videos on YouTube, and it's actually still the longest interview he's gave on video and on audio. There are other shorter interviews that are like 20 minutes, but mine's an hour and a half of pure goodness.
Did you say he talked to you for about 2 hours in total?
Oh yeah, I mean we spoke at length off camera. It was great.
Yeah.
We were just chatting about all sorts. He's such
really
a nice
cool
guy. I mean, he's a really nice guy. He's, you know, all the devs that I've spoke to are really nice people, and they, you know, they want to be honest, and they, you know, they say stuff sometimes that obviously what they want to do that's most important with the no firewall, you know, with talking to the devs, talk to the fans. What they want to make sure is that they want to include the fans in their thought processes. So if they say something that's possibly going to be in the game, it's not definite that it's going to be in the game, but they want to see the response and what people think of it, and go through the processes of making the game with the fans as well. And I think that's really cool.
All right. So next up, you had a length conversation about how the combat's going to be. Yeah, and how many games did he relate it to? It was Dark Souls, Space Marine. Oh God, what other games were there? But it was all these big titles that I absolutely love.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the combat is essentially, the way I like to think of it, I mean, obviously we're still yet to see the combat in action, but from what I've gathered, it's pretty much Space Marine in MMO form, with obviously the necessary tweaks to make it competitive and to make it work in an MMO format. And I'm totally down with that because, to be honest, I've played hotbar-based MMOs for the majority of my MMO gaming life, and I am bored of clicking those buttons.
I don't argue that at all.
It's really boring. And you know, there's this thing at the moment on the threads that are saying about, you know, controller versus mouse and keyboard. I want to play with a controller. I like the feel of a controller. I was a console gamer long before I was an MMO player, a PC gamer, and I like the feel of a pad and a controller in my hands, and having to engage in the combat rather than just stare at a hotbar. I want to see what's going on. I'm more of a mouse and
keyboard man.
But either way, it's still more engaging, isn't it? Regardless of whether you use a controller or a mouse or keyboard, the combat is going to be engaging. You're not going to be staring at cooldowns. You're going to be,
and it has to be, as combat is the main feature of the game, is the main thing on this game. It has to be engaging.
Exactly.
Or the whole game will
But
fall
it's
apart.
one of those things where you're going to have to pay attention to what the enemy's doing to be able to dodge, strafe. You're going to have to be aware of your surroundings, and you're not going to be staring at one part of the screen. You're going to be constantly trying to be aware of your surroundings, and that keeps you engaged instead of just staring at a number all the time.
And you have to be aware of what your allies are doing now too, or you
Exactly.
shoot them.
Yeah, that's for damn sure.
And they've said that they want to make the change between ranged combat and melee combat seamless. They want to make it, easy to use, fluid, visceral, and I'm, down
If they
with
do
that.
that something like they did in Warhammer Space Marine, that will be really good.
Exactly, and I'm down with that. I've got no problem with that. I love Space Marine. I wish Space Marine had some decent multiplayer so I could play more.
Now, that's actually a good question. I don't know about you all, but Michael, did you ever... I mean, you and I weren't able to play together because, well, the Space Marines multiplayer was balls. But did you play any online at all, or did you never...
I did a little bit, yeah.
What did you think about that?
I liked the majority. Obviously, it was a bit rough in places because it was clear that Space Marine as a game in particular was more focused on the single player aspect of the game.
It really was, and it was also the peer-to-peer combat, or the
Yeah.
peer-to-peer connection really didn't.
But
help.
in its core form, I really enjoyed the multiplayer. I didn't see a problem with it. It was tough. I mean, obviously, it's that if you transferred directly that multiplayer into an MMO scene, it would fail because you obviously need to tweak it and make it more fluid. But at its core form, it was a fun multiplayer experience. I wouldn't say it wasn't bad. It was tough to get a hold of at first, because by the time I got into it, especially on the PC, everyone was so much better than me.
Well, yeah,
I would get wiped out.
That's obvious.
It's still
there.
fun. It was still fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I only played the co-op part of it.
The Exterminatus.
Exterminatus.
Because I kept getting shot in the head when I got into the other one. So I took the fun out of it really, really fast.
Well,
but yeah,
thinking about that, where you've got, I think it's 3 attack buttons total for... No, that's right. There's your main hand, your offhand, your kick, and your grenade. That's the amount of combat skill or buttons that you have for Space Marine. And depending on how you use those buttons in what actions, such as doing, 2 melee attacks followed by a kick, or doing 1 melee attack followed by a kick, you're able to execute a different type of attack, just like you would in a fighter-based game. Do you think that we're going to be seeing something like that coming in this game as well, where it's going to be limited amount of buttons, but depending on how you use those attacks in unison or in succession, not unison, but in succession, we'll get different types of combat strikes?
Yeah, I definitely think that we'll see variety.
It would be a cool format.
I think I don't see any reason why they wouldn't put a little bit of variety in terms of like combos and stuff in.
Right.
But it's a very, again, because it's an MMO and because it's so very PvP focused, you have to be so careful with the balance of that kind of thing, and you have to make sure that if someone's pulling off a combo, that doesn't stop you from countering or attacking them, unless it's a kill animation, obviously.
Right.
So you have to be able to stop the combo in the middle of it. If your target moves and you just keep walking off in the same direction, swinging your power sword, that would look pretty stupid.
Exactly. So it's something that it needs. It's going to be tricky to. I think they can pull it off. It's something that's going to be tricky to pull off. But I think if they do pull it off, then it's going to be cracking.
Awesome.
For sure.
All right, so up next in your notes that you conveniently placed in here for me, you've got elements of game, PvE, PvP, and so on.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what you were leaning to on this.
Well,
it'll come to me as you start talking about it.
It's something that's on the forum a lot at the moment, and it's primarily that the game is obviously primarily a PvP game. Okay, we all know that. But there are PvE elements, and the PvE elements are the Tyranids, which will be the NPCs in the game, and doing those PvE missions if you like, because I'll be doing some, because why not? I want to shoot some Tyranids.
Oh yeah, I mean there's all those different aspects of the game. Why not explore them all?
And
Yeah,
all
definitely.
those, and they're designing it so that all those aspects are beneficial to do for the overall campaign. So if you do a PvE mission and you get some loot at the end of that PvE mission that you can't use personally, but would be useful for your team as a whole or your faction as a whole, then that will be useful to them, and you can give it to them, so to speak. It's something I think. What I'm a little bit annoyed about in the forums, particularly, is some players. I think some people get it and some people don't.
Okay.
And the people who don't get it are the people who haven't looked into it, and I think it's different perceptions and different expectations of what people want out of this game. There's going to be players who just want sole PvP. There's going to be players who want sole PvE. There's going to be players who want a mix of that. There's going to be people who want to RP in the game. There's going to be a whole mix of players in this community, and it's all going to be, it's going to be a single server. It's going to be a single constant world. And
Okay.
so they're all going to have to get along, whether you like it or not.
Well, yeah.
And I think a lot at the moment is that a lot of PvP heavy players are concerned at the moment. As soon as someone like myself, I put up an RP thread. As soon as someone does that, they're like, "No, this game is PvP. You're not allowed here."
Well, that's actually something I kind of wanted to address in light of what Sam was talking about in our last episode. And Sam and I previously have had many, many, many conversations about how role-playing works in, well, not necessarily games like this, but it stemmed from our conversations about the Old Republic, and how you've already got an overlaying story already made for you. Just like this game's going to have a story that, that's why everyone's doing what they do, with the exception of just the desire to kill every one of the opposing factions. The overall story doesn't have to affect what you do. Playing a specific role doesn't mean that you are that role purely because you picked that role. Being a role player, you are whoever the hell you want to be. The avatar is just provided for you. It doesn't make you who you are. That's your role to do as the role player.
Exactly.
And if PvPers don't like you, then they'll kill you. What the hell's the problem?
Yeah, but it's a case of there's some within the PvP community that are almost aggressively attacking certain sections of the community on the forums by saying that we shouldn't be catered for. RPers, PvEers shouldn't be catered for because it's their game. It's PvP centric, so it's their game, and no one else matters. And I think,
but why fear that there are more bodies in the game? I don't get that.
But I think it's not. I'm not blaming them. I think it's a lack of understanding on their part, because what they think by having things like text chatting or animations or emotes or something like that is that it's going to take away from the resources of their PvP experience, and it's not. It's not. That's not how it works. And if you think that's how games are made, then go back to school.
I don't understand, okay, they don't like the role-playing aspect, and they think that because, role players should be the game, that the game has to be, something that could have been put toward PvP has to be taken away so that they can provide something for the RP element. I guess I can kind of understand that logic, even though, I'm sorry, it sounds pretty stupid to me, but...
It's false logic.
It is, but what is the point about being angry about, just like Ol said, bringing more bodies into the game? That's more people that are going to be putting money into the game, which means they're going to have more resources to develop that aspect that they think they're going to miss out on because other resources were put toward catering to the role players.
Exactly.
And no one forces the PvPers to role play or anything.
Exactly. That is my whole point. The fact is, if I wasn't an RPer and I was a PvP player, I would want the RP community in my game, because they spend a lot of money on things that normal PvPers do not buy. Okay?
Yeah.
And that gives the game a lot of resources to add more content for you in the long run.
And it's free content for the game community, right? When you role play. I haven't been much of a role player myself, but I would love to try it. So I'm not fearing that it's in the game. I'm actually looking forward to it.
It's one of those things that it's fine if you don't like to role play or you don't like to PvE. That's fine, okay? No one's forcing you to do that, but you don't have to aggressively try and stamp it out of a community, because at the end of the day, it's just what players prefer, And it's good to have diversity in your game. It's good to have different types of sub-communities in your game, because that builds up a long-lasting MMO.
It keeps the game alive.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, I'm an RPer. If you're a PvPer and you hate RPers, come and shoot me, because I'll just put it into my roleplay. I'll be like, oh, look, they're attacking me.
And then both of
So
you are happy.
this brings up another question on a similar but different front. Do you think the PvPers are also resenting the fact that there's going to be people in the game that will not be doing roleplay and will not be doing PvP, but will in fact be exclusively looking toward the PvE, quote-unquote, element of the game, which essentially is go kill some Tyranids? Do you think they're going to resent that those guys will be in here too?
I mean, as I say, I'm not speaking generally for the general. I know the majority of PvPers, they get it, I know.
Yeah, I know you're talking about the
but
vocal minority on this
there's the sub-few, and they can be resentful of that. But at the end of the day, the game is being designed so that those PvEers are helping the PvP war effort in the long run anyway. So technically, if I was solely PvP, I want someone to be going doing that PvE content, because that's helping me.
Absolutely.
And in another aspect, so you want people to be doing that for your overall faction.
Sounds logical to me.
Yes, it does.
All right, fair enough. So, you think we got enough there, or should we move on to the next subject?
Yeah.
All right, so we've got the campaigns and the story, which I guess kind of conveniently fits right into what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
There is a story, but I
There
think
is.
campaigns are what most people are going to be concerned about, at least until we know who this mysterious writer is.
Yeah, I can't wait till the writer gets
I'm
announced.
curious myself. I want to look up who this person is so that I know.
So, campaigns and story are basically going to be intertwined in the game. Now, we all know that the game is basically it's sandbox-esque in the fact that they want to give you the tools so you get this world and you can go and do whatever you want. Campaign objectives, things like taking an enemy strategic point, things like that are going to be run by the players. But there's going to be Stephen Lumpkin, who's, I think he's the lead level designer. He came to the forums recently and put a post about campaigns and story because people were asking about it. And he said that there's going to be some campaigns, because they're going to have different lengths and different objectives and span different continents on the planet. And he said that some campaigns will have a more heavy story focus and some campaigns won't. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be the heavy story campaigns will be linear, because they won't. It's just that there's more reason for you to do that, and it builds into the overall experience. Because there is, Warhammer is a great world, a great universe, and it's got great stories in there. And of course, you need a reason to be fighting on this planet, and you need a reason to move around onto the different continents. And I think, and it's been said that you will be seeing some iconic figures of the 40k universe. So they're going to tie in quite nicely, and I think that it's a really good way to do it, to make sure that they keep them almost the same, that campaigns and story are together, so it makes sense.
Right.
I'm looking forward to seeing how they're going to, what incentive they're going to give people to play these campaigns, because we know there is no level progression in the game. So what benefits are you going to get from playing the campaigns?
Well, there's going to be a lot of objectives spread through the world, right? So,
yeah,
depending on what objectives you claim, and I forget the exact words of what was used to determine who was the winner of the campaign. Are there like keeps or key locations that need to be claimed?
Well, there's primary objectives and secondary objectives.
Okay, yeah, that's it.
And those objectives are basically going to hold benefits and negatives. So if you lose certain locations, that's going to have a negative impact on your resources and your requisition.
Right.
And if you gain a certain strategic point, that's going to have a certain benefit. But if you let one go, that's going to have a certain negative. And it basically builds up so that each campaign, the outcome of each campaign is going to affect you on the next one, in terms of what resources your faction has available, in terms of all kinds of different factors overall that will affect your faction overall. And it may even come into, which I hope it does, in terms of the equipment that's actually available. Because if they're going to put vehicles and stuff in, and say you have a manufactorum in there, and you lose that manufactorum, where are you going to get your vehicles from after that? And then so maybe next campaign, you don't have access to certain vehicles because you lost that particular strategic point. And I think that is a great incentive in terms of a Battlefield experience, and especially in terms of a Warhammer 40k experience, because you want to keep those strategic locations for the war effort, and you don't want the enemy to gain those, because if the enemy gains too many strategic points, you're going to end up having very few resources, and you're going to get steamrolled.
Right. Don't you risk making one faction very overpowered then?
But I think that's the point in having lengths of the campaigns, because it gets to the point where the campaign's just going to end, because if one is just absolutely obliterating, then you move on to the next campaign and you have a chance to fight back. I think that it's going to be difficult in terms of balance of the factions. It's going to be difficult to tell so early on at the moment, because obviously in the polls we can see that Space Marines are steamrolling ahead in terms of the amount of people saying that they're going to play Space Marine.
And we predicted that much.
And yeah, of course.
Not the hardest prediction to make.
But again, it's not taking things into account like the free-to-play element, so that's going to boost the Orc forces quite a bit. Yeah. And of course, by the time launch comes, you're going to have a lot more Eldar players, you're going to have a lot more Orc players, you're going to have Chaos players, and I think although you may probably still see a Space Marine overpopulation, I think that will actually start to dip out.
Yeah.
A little bit, because I know that there are people who just want to try them out for a bit and then move on to something else, and you're going to get that kind of.
Well, you're gonna get a lot of people that will get the kind of window shopping syndrome with it. Once they start off as a Space Marine, they're going to see another faction and be like, "Oh, that looks cool. I want to try that one." Or you're going to get the other people that are going to be like, "Everyone's playing a Space Marine. I don't want to do that," but they really do. So they'll go play something to spite the fact that
I like Eldar, and I've always been a fan of Eldar, and I like the fact that a lot of people are going to be playing Space Marine, because it just gives me more people to kill.
We've established this already. You're going to be virtually by yourself, and you're just going to be ignored to death.
Hey, that's fine. Just try and take me down.
Yeah, and the Space Marines are all going to kill each other trying to hit Michael. So that's
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good point. Michael's going to stand in the center of an entire ring of Space Marines, and they're all just going to, blast cannon themselves into oblivion. Michael will stand there dumbfounded on how he's alive.
That is very Eldar-esque. Let them kill themselves. It's fine. I'll just stand and watch.
Of course, he's going to sit there crying, possibly wet himself, and be up in a huddled little ball. And then he'll realize after a few hours that he's been the only one alive for a long time.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be good.
All right, fair enough.
But it's early to say. Again, it's a year or two off. It's early to say in terms of balance and things like that. It really needs a little bit of. The game needs to come out first to really get a sense of that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, I listened to the interview just a little over an hour ago, and so, but my memory's already foggy because again, I don't intake the information nearly as well as when I'm out working, where I don't have to think about anything else, and I get easily distracted when I'm sitting at my desk. But there was talk about how you could find stuff like ancient technology, stuff like that, and bring those back to your objective points. And if you lost the objective point, you would also lose the technology to whomever took the objective. Am I remembering that incorrectly, or is that about the gist of the information given?
I think that's right, yeah. It's very similar to the way the PvE element's going to apparently work, in the fact that, if you discover technology and you bring it back, you can lose that technology back to an opposing faction if they take that point, that strategic point. And I like that, because it adds a sense of fear and importance to strategic points. Again, about the motivation behind doing campaigns and keeping hold of your strategic points is the fact that you have something to lose. It's not just a location on the map that you can go take back in 10 minutes.
That's awesome.
You're going to lose. You're going to have something to lose. You have something to lose, and you don't want to lose it, and then you want to take the enemies because they've got something you don't have.
Now, another question on that is, do we know if there's anything like, for example, you've got The Elder Scrolls Online, which is doing a similar campaign system, and for their individual point scale, you're going to get stuff called alliance points, which, you know, you experienced the Old Republic when it launched, and you had that section of Ilum where you could flip the points and get more points for flipping it. Is there going to be anything like points that you get individually when you take an objective, which could possibly direct people toward trying to keep flip?
Oh, I've no idea. I mean,
because I don't remember anything about that as of yet.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, I'm assuming that basically a lot the equipment system is going to be based on kind of a requisition point system.
Yes.
That you gain requisition points. I know that there's going to be achievements in the game, whether they will unlock things or have any actual effect on what you have access to, it's too early to say. So we don't really know, to be honest.
I'm really excited to find out how those requisition points work, if you carry them over when you run from one battle to the other, or if they dissipate over time, or what they'll do.
I wouldn't be surprised if you see 2 sets of requisition points, one for your faction and one for your personal use.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a question here in the chat from Friendus. What do you guys think about the disadvantages of buying weapons on the auction house with less quality than the same weapon you get through a dungeon? Now, I don't know that we know anything about there being an auction house of sorts, and I know that gear is going to be, you know, a lot more important than what you would find in previous MMOs. So it's a whole different battlefield, in a manner of speaking, with that specific subject. But how do you guys think about that, at least in terms of what we know at this point?
It might piss off the PvPers, I would say, if they don't want to run dungeons, but that's the only way to get the good gear. But it will be a great incentive for people to go there.
It's too difficult to tell because we don't know how we don't know exactly what the ins and outs of the loot system are going to be yet. And that is just the fact of it. We can speculate all day, but we don't know how exactly it's going to work. We don't know how PvPers are going to get their equipment. We don't necessarily know exactly how PvEs are going to get theirs. We don't know what kind of auction system, if any, there will be in the game. And we don't know what, you know, it's just, we don't know. And that's the honest truth. We can speculate all day, but we don't know.
I think what I would like to see, and, you know, bear with me for a second here, folks. But say there's this cavern you go into, essentially a dungeon, or the underworld, or whatever you're going to call it, where there's a Carnifex down inside this place, and this Carnifex just slaughters legions of players trying to take this thing down. And whatever type of artifact drop or whatever you find down in here increases in quality the more and more and more people go and get slaughtered. And I don't mean just people throwing bodies at it to boost the actual quality. I mean it just is literally that tough that legions die trying to take this thing out. I think that'd be a fun idea. Maybe
and it would be something that would create story on its own.
Yeah.
I would like there to be challenge.
But I also think if he's asking about, do I think that it's good to have disadvantages of buying weapons on the auction house over acquiring them by various in-game means, then I think that I'm fine with that. I think you should reward people who spend time in your game over people who have money.
With that line of thinking, I completely agree.
That's my personal preference on that. I think if I spend time in your game, I would prefer to be rewarded over someone who spends 10 minutes and goes on the auction house. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because I know it's a time over money thing and people don't have as much time. But, you know, it's still nice to be rewarded for the effort that you put in.
Now, maybe thinking about how if there's an item that you have found out in the battlefield and you turn it into your faction, maybe that is essentially what happens. You give it to your faction, it gives you, you know, a number of requisition points based on the quality of whatever it is you gave it. And then, you know, people can go, when they go to use the requisition points to a static store of some sort, it gets put in there. You know,
I think that's the way. I think that's definitely a way I would like to see it work. I think that would be very true to the Warhammer 40k universe, especially in terms of Space Marines, Space Marine lore, and the fact that any technology, weapons, things like that you discover all goes to the armory, and then based on your feats and requisition that you have, you would be able to get that out of the vaults. I think that would be that's the way I would like to see it done anyway. But whether it will happen that way, who knows?
Yeah, we don't know anything yet.
All right. So moving on to the next one, we have strike forces, which are essentially guilds.
Yes. I mean, we don't know too much about guilds as of yet.
Right.
We know that they're going to be guilds, which is good. We know that it's going to be also tied into various aspects of the game, including player housing and things like that.
Guild ships.
You get guild ships. I love guild ships. So it's good that they're there. I'm glad that they're there. I think it's important that they are there for communities and clans that have already started. I mean, there's so many that have already started. It's crazy. So it's good to have them there, and I think it's important for guilds to be in the game. I'm not sure if they will ever get round to making your own chapter. I don't think Games Workshop will let up on that.
Well, they said that they are talking to Games Workshop.
They're talking to Games Workshop about it. It's a difficult one. This issue splits Warhammer 40k community right down the middle on this.
Well, yeah, looking at Dawn of War and Dawn of War 2, it was the... Okay, don't let me get yelled at for this one again, but is the Blood Ravens that are in that one, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah. I know a lot of quote-unquote 40k purists that are livid about the existence of these, game-specific factions.
I know there's a lot of people in the Warhammer 40k community who don't acknowledge Blood Ravens as a chapter.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. All my buddies who've played it, they enjoy the hell out of the games, but they refuse to acknowledge them.
Yeah, they don't consider it as canon.
That's fair enough.
No.
I've seen some questions in the forums where they've asked if, and this was actually, I think, part of the Q&A we talked about last week too, but where fans have asked whether they'll have the ability to, even though they are, part of said Space Marine chapter, if they'll be able to put on armor or customize their appearance so that they look like they are part of, the Black Templar or, any of the other 40 some odd chapters. I just threw a number out there. Don't yell at me.
About 100.
Whatever. A lot.
Well, if I got what Miguel said in the interview right, then the only thing that will put the different chapters apart is their appearance, or else they will play pretty much the same. But appearance-wise, they will probably get to be different to look at.
Yeah, I think. I
hope it's more than just appearance.
Me personally,
but they said that would be a problem with balancing if you give every different chapter their different abilities.
Yeah, I mean, you're obviously going to have customization in terms of your weapons upgrade system. Mm-hmm. That's obviously going to be there. You're going to have customization in terms of the armor that you wear. Personally, I don't want to see bright orange.
Well, yeah, I can
that's chaos.
That's a personal preference of mine, and I like to keep it as immersive as possible, so that if the 4 chapters are the 4 chapters that have been announced, I'd like people to stick to those.
Right.
But that's I know there are people who want to be very individual, and I think that the behavior will do it in a way that remains immersive and remains true to the lore side of things, while giving you enough customization to feel unique and individual, because I know that's what MMO players want. They want to feel individual and unique. So I think there can be a happy balance in there somewhere.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
The Dark Angels have been confirmed, so I'm happy.
Yeah.
Black Templars have been talked about, so I'm moderately satisfied.
Somewhat content.
Exactly. All right, so next, let's go ahead and move on forward. We've already mentioned a little bit about guild ships, but player housing has been confirmed in the game, and I've got to say that above my most favorite thing you guys talked about. Now, every player is going to get their own individual ship, which will be out in orbit, and it will be theirs to do with as they please. But should they join with a strike force, they will be able to combine their ships. All the people in the strike force will be able to combine their ships together to produce a frigate, which will be their guild's frigate, and each individual player will, within this frigate, have their own cabin, which they will be able to, as with their ship, do what they want with.
Yep.
Did I misunderstand this? I didn't think you get your own ship. I just thought you got your own cabin.
Well,
yeah, no, you get your
when you before you combine your ship with your guild or your strike force, you do have your own individual ship. Not a big one, but you have your own ship.
I thought you just had your own cabin on a big strike cruiser where all the newbies go, or the guildless people.
No, I don't remember that.
As far as I was aware, you had your own ship, but I don't know if that's been changed.
I don't know. I just thought you got your own cabin on a big cruiser where
I'll find out.
Because you need an area where you can interact with people. So go gallivanting off in your own ship. That won't force that much interaction.
Well, I think it'll be in the same vein as what you would expect from your own your own house in Lord of the Rings Online or one of those other games that I guess have housing in it, where it's just your place to go. Or you look at Star Wars: The Old Republic, where everyone has their own ship, which acts as their own personal space. They can bring other players there if they want to, but it's just this one very small space that is yours to sit in if you want.
Yeah, I think regardless of the mechanics, how it's going to work, whether it's a ship or a cabin, I think it's a really good thing. I think that helps all aspects of the community.
Buy customizations for it, whether with requisition points.
We know
exactly.
You're going to be able to. You're going to be able to customize it. So.
Yeah.
Last week in the Q&A on MMORPG, they said that you would get your own cabin, and you and your friends would together get a hall, right?
Oh,
and then
okay, yeah.
Guilds could get their own ship.
Yeah, that's post connecting your ship with your guild frigate. So that what he was talking about was that was already to the stage of having the guild frigate. So before you join the guild and combine your ship, you'll have your own ship. There you go.
It'd be interesting.
Yeah. And if all else fails, we can send Michael off to ask.
Yep. Yeah. I'll find out.
But anyway, player housing, it's confirmed. It's going to be awesome, and I'm greatly anticipating it.
And we're stoked about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, so social interaction, community interaction, and everything that interacts with those interactions.
Yes. Beautiful, beautiful introduction. So in terms of social interaction in-game, I already know because I covered this on my Astronomicon video last week, because I asked Patrick Balthazar about what kinds of forms of communication we'll have in-game. Now, text
chat bubbles.
Yeah, text chat has been confirmed. So we'll definitely have text chat no matter what.
Right.
Currently, we're in terms of voice support, in-game voice support, they're looking into various options. What they're looking to see if they will host their own servers for in-game voice chat. They've also got to think about technical specifications. They've got to think about performance. They've got to think about range as well, in-game range of who would be able to hear your voice. They're also considering the idea of integrating TeamSpeak servers, so you can access your TeamSpeak server via the game.
Oh, that'd be cool.
I think that's a really good idea. Really I think that would be a great idea in terms of, I think that would save on some resources if they needed to. Instead of hosting their own voice, they're also looking into things like voice modulation. So you'll be able to sound like an Eldar, sound like a Space Marine.
And then whatever you say just gets auto-spoken as it works. Dem humies over there.
It's definitely, voice chat is definitely a maybe in terms of how it's going to be supported in the game. It's going to be, there's a lot to look into. It's only early stages, and there's still a lot to look into, and you've got to weigh up all the other aspects of the game. But they're going to do their best because it's important for them. In terms of community interaction as well, Miguel said in the interview that they're going to have stuff like integration with YouTube. So if you pull off like a really kick-ass kill, and then doing it like a really cool emote on top of the corpse.
Okay.
You can record that and send it to you directly to YouTube and stuff like that.
Now, what was that emote that he?
Power armor.
What was the emote that he described in your interview?
I can't remember.
You don't remember? All right. So, as say you're an orc boy and you wag your butt over top of the space marine whom you just slaughter's head, and then you promptly stick his head up your butt and squeeze it off.
Nice.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but I like that. I think that's cool, and I think it helps in the long run and means that people who've got guild websites and things like that, they get to post cool stuff, and it's a nice feature. Just things like that are just nice to have in the game because it promotes community interaction outside of the game.
Well, yeah, and
like
it's
that.
also I really love the idea of them having the ability to just directly upload stuff straight to YouTube. But on top of that, and again, bear with me, but say they do have TeamSpeak or some kind of voice chat worked up in game, and you are able to make it, maybe Strike Force specific, or your little squad of men running around out in the middle of nowhere doing some kind of scouting thing. You get spotted by some Chaos Marines, and they know you're there. You don't know they're there, and they want to know what you're up to. Say one of them is able to somehow crack your communications channel and listen into what you're saying. They have intel that you're trying to keep secret. They're able to use that, exploit it, and, kill you down and ruin whatever plans you had in progress.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things, it's a nice idea, but in actual practice, I don't think that you'll see it.
No.
Probably not. I mean, it's just a fun idea, but
Yeah.
we're probably a long ways away from something like that.
Yeah, it's just it can break. I think it's a case of it could sometimes break immersion, and
Yeah.
you can get. And the problem is that things like that are easy to abuse.
Wouldn't that be nice to break someone's comm chat to find out they're sitting there talking about what clothes they've been out buying the last couple of weeks?
Well, and then what I mean by abuse is I think you can get people who the trolls of the MMO world,
Yeah.
who will try and ruin your experience by abusing systems like that.
The internet is where the assholes live.
Exactly.
Amen. Oh, you're not talking about me? No. My bad.
Specifically, Road, not specifically.
But I like that. I mean, the guys at Behaviour are very. They seem to be very community-driven, community-focused, and I like that. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
thumbs
It's
up from me.
definitely a breath of fresh air compared to constantly hearing
It is.
soon TM or we can't talk about that right now.
Yeah, but I just want to tell you, I want directly because I know some of the Behaviour developers listen to this show. I want to tell you this: you have ruined MMOs for me right now. All right, I'm serious. I'm not even kidding.
Just not this one.
I can't read other developers' statements at the moment. It makes me cringe with anger. It's like you're not being honest with me. That's PR bullshit. Don't do it. And it's just MMOs are ruined. That's it. We're done. Just bring the game out now. Just let me play it now.
Speaking as someone who not only does, 2 Star Wars The Old Republic podcasts, but also has an Elder Scrolls Online podcast, and now this, Warhammer 40k Eternal Crusade podcast, I've had a decent amount of experience trying to communicate with devs at this point, and for the most part, my emails get ignored. And when I try to harass them on, on Twitter, I think I might be on someone's ignore list at this point. Possibly.
Yeah. But this is the thing, and I'm not saying the no firewall thing's not perfect, and it never will be.
No.
But when they came out with the no firewall thing, they treat what I like about the way they've approached the community is that they've treated the community with respect and said, look, this is us, this is what we want to do, don't abuse it. And the community said, okay, we respect that, they're open with us, we'll be open with them, and it means that everyone's off on the right foot and everyone tries to make it work instead of having one side being defensive all the time, which is usually the developers, because the fans get so frustrated at the developers because they're not honest with them, that you actually have two groups of people, and the line that is traditionally in MMOs where it's fans versus developers is no longer there, and you have two sides working towards the same goal, which is to create a fantastic gaming experience, which is what we all want at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we can also just be happy about it because the open doors they are giving us a lot more to talk about. Oh, this could be a long ride.
Exactly. And I like that.
It's exactly what you said, Michael. You know, when you said fans versus the developers, that is going to be taken in a very literal step when it comes to this game, because they are going to be out there on the battlefield with us. We are going to know who they are. And, you know, for the sake of the Emperor, don't abuse that. You know, if you see something that is vitally wrong with the game, if there is a game-breaking bug in progress, and you think that there's a possibility they don't know it's there, inform them. Let them know so it can be taken care of. But if you're just pissed off about something not being the way you want it to be, and you need someone to harass or someone to troll, leave them the hell alone so you don't ruin it for the rest of us.
It's like what Miguel said. At the end of the day, if you see a developer in game, it's because the developer is playing as a player, not as a developer.
Exactly.
And they want to enjoy their experience. So if you've got like legitimate complaints about the game or concerns, there's an official forum for that to raise your concerns. Don't be spamming people in general chat or whatever, because that's no fun for anyone, and it annoys people. And it's a case of there's always going to be, and sadly the case is there's always going to be the rotten few who are going to attempt to spoil it for the rest of us. But I think that the majority of the community, and I would say 99% of the community at the moment, is absolutely fantastic and understanding, and they know what, I think everyone's on the same page in what we're trying to do as a community and what the developers are trying to do.
Right.
And I think that if we keep that going, because I know as soon as some arsehole tries to be an arsehole, they're going to get shot down by the majority of the community, never mind the developers, because the community is just going to like, who are you? Go away. We don't want you here.
I could see that happening, yeah. And I would be one of those people because, you know, I've played with some developers in some games before, and it's really awesome to be able to actually, you know, just bullshit with them. Just be able to talk to them like they're just another player like me. And, you know, it really sucks that these guys have to hide behind a veil and not tell people who they are. Because, you know, they're afraid that their experience is going to be screwed up, and then, you know, they have to, if they want to continue playing, they've got to go through, change their name, change their account information, make sure no one knows who they are again. It's a big hassle for them. They just want to play. You know, just because they make the game doesn't mean that that is their sole source of enjoyment. Maybe they want to go out and actually enjoy the product that they've helped make.
Exactly. I mean, and I think that's important because the developers, especially, I know a lot of the team take pride in their work.
Yeah.
So,
long story short, they're there, leave them the hell alone, enjoy the fact that they are there. So, moving on. We've got one final point before we wrap up this conversation, which is the business model. And if you remember listening in last week when we got to my personal questions sent to the Q&A, I'll go ahead and, well, just quote this point that was made. Once I find it, because I lost it. There it goes. Hey, there it is. I have so many windows open, and I shouldn't, because I'm trying to run a show here. So, as David responded to my, well, question about free-to-play players sticking bombs in themselves and running to the front line because, hey, what else are they good for? Free-to-play players will be full players with an important role to fill in the Orc army. They won't be relegated to cannon fodder status. So they are going to actually have a point in the game aside from me watching them run to their deaths and exploding gloriously.
Good.
But yeah, anyway.
I like that. But yeah, I mean, the business model is it's a very simple model. It's basically a freemium game.
Right.
So there's going to be a subscription. There's a free-to-play option, which is the Orcs. So if you want to play free-to-play, you can. I myself will no doubt subscribe.
Absolutely.
And spend copious amounts of money on the in-game store.
Now, did he say that there was going to be a subscription? I thought it was just a buy.
I got rather confused here because didn't he say it was going to be like Guild Wars?
Yeah.
Oh, it might be, yes.
And then you can add on your other factions by buying that faction? I didn't get that there was going to be a subscription.
There might not be a subscription. I may have got that wrong.
Now, I think what you might have been hearing right there is that, you know, if we buy the game, it should give us access to the initial 4 factions.
If you buy the game, all the factions are unlocked for you.
And then
and then additional expansions and races will be monetized.
Which can be related to if you played Dawn of War 2 and you've done the Last Stand mode, which at least two of us here are very fond of. You can get a hold of the Tau or get the Lord General, stuff like that. If you buy them, then you can play them. They're already in the game, but in order to access them, you have to purchase them. That's like Guild Wars 1 with all their expansions.
Yeah, and it's good. And I spoke to Miguel because one of my biggest concerns, especially with such a PvP-focused game, is the thing of pay to win. And it's not going to be a pay to win game. The type of things that are going to be on the in-game store are things like cosmetic items, customization items. There was mention of things like boosts for your faction, stuff like that. But it's not something that you need to be better at the game. It's very cosmetic, subjective stuff, and obviously later down the line, no doubt races and things like that. But it's stuff that you don't need to be better at the game, and it's stuff that if the person who's got a big fat bank account and me who doesn't, that person with the big fat bank account is not going to be in any way better at the game than I am just because he's got loads of money to spend on that in-game store.
He might just look a little bit prettier.
He might just look a bit prettier. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm also very glad that Miguel said he doesn't want the game to be play to win, because that kills community.
Well, it'll kill. At the end of the day, it kills games. Pay to win kills games, and
it really does.
Especially in an MMO sense. For MMOs to be profitable nowadays, you really need a strong community, and you need a loyal fan base and a loyal community. And if you make a game like this pay to win, it won't get past its first year.
No, it won't.
And that's a fact. I think everyone knows that now. And I think I don't think there's any bad intentions in that. I think I'm happy that monetize cosmetics. I'll buy it. I'm one of those people. I will buy stupid stuff off the in-game store because I like it. But as long as it's not pay to win, thumbs up from me. Monetize what you want.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree. All right, so essentially, I think that pretty much closes out what we had to talk about with your interview with Miguel. If there is any more about that, we will have a link in our show notes when we post the episode for you to go through and, listen to the hour and 25-ish minutes interview yourself.
Yep,
so
and subscribe.
It's a good interview.
Absolutely, yes.
Subscribe, give me views.
Yeah.
Of course. So
shameless plug.
Oh, we're all shameless here. It's all about producing the product. So, moving on to our lore section, that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah.
What do you have for us this week, since we didn't do it last week?
I'm going to do a quick introduction to Space Marines. I'm not going to go into massive detail about it. I'm going to give you a brief history. Very quick, not going to take up much of your time. Because obviously, in future episodes, we'll go into the individual chapters and a bit more in depth about... because the Space Marines in general, each chapter is very different than each other. So... I'll give you a very brief introduction. So, as always, Space Marines are, possibly the most well-known Warhammer 40k race. They are at least certainly the most iconic. There's so many things that outside of Warhammer that Space Marines have been based on. I mean, just take a look at things like StarCraft. Blatant rip-off. Just saying.
Yeah.
So Space Marines are otherwise known as Adeptus Astartes. And they are genetically engineered superhumans that are made for the sole purpose of protecting the Imperium of Man from its vast array of enemies. The Space Marines are organised into chapters. There is roughly around 1,000 of these chapters, around depending on the timeline.
Good God, I was off.
I was way off too.
Yeah, it's okay, I forgive you. Each chapter is supposed to contain only around 1,000 Space Marines. But there are those chapters who are suspected to contain more, for example, being the Black Templars, who are roughly said to estimate, we don't know the numbers, but it's roughly around 7,000, some people suspect. Each chapter is its own self-sufficient army. It contains its vessels, equipment, it's got its own recruiting methods, so it's its own sustained body in itself. It doesn't need outside resources to help it. They can do it all on themselves, basically. Now, the Space Marines we all know and love, they were originally created from the gene seed of 20 Primarchs, who are the genetic sons of the Emperor of Man himself. Originally, 20 Space Marine legions were formed, one from each Primarch's gene seed. Now, when this happened, the Chaos Gods didn't take too kindly to the Emperor's beloved Primarchs, and during an incident with the Warp, scattered these Primarchs across the galaxy, in which the Emperor himself then led the Space Marine legions across the galaxy to reclaim these Primarchs, and this would become known as the Great Crusade. Now, near the close of this crusade, the Emperor's favourite son, Horus, who had been corrupted by the powers of chaos, led 9 of those legions against the Emperor, and this was known as the Horus Heresy. And during the Siege of Terra, which is Earth, the Emperor's forces were heavily outnumbered, and Horus basically they were so heavily outnumbered, and the Emperor and the Blood Angel Primarch Sanguinis transported aboard Horus's flagship to engage him in one-on-one combat. The Blood Angel Primarch Sanguinis was killed, and the Emperor was mortally wounded, but not before killing Horus. The mortal wound of the Emperor would become the reason why he's contained in the device known as the Golden Throne, which preserves him in a kind of near-death state, but allows his psychic abilities to basically travel across the galaxy and effect various things, which I'll go into another time. Now, seeing how powerful these legions were when they fell to chaos, the Ultramarine Primarch, Robert Gulliman, basically decided to write a rulebook called the Codex Astartes. Now, the Codex didn't only provide combat guidelines, but it basically rewrote the structure of the Space Marines, changing them from a large legion to smaller individual forces called chapters. Now, although some chapters see the Codex as basically a holy book not to be deviated from, others disagreed with him, especially people like Lehman Russ, who is the Primarch of the Space Wolves, and they take a more relaxed approach to its writings, kind of doing what they please, but keeping the overall premise of it, the fact that they are there to serve the Imperium of Man and protect it. Each chapter basically, after thousands of years, has basically developed its own culture, their own training methods, their own beliefs, but the main purpose remains the same, that they are there to fight the enemies of man, even though sometimes they are probably less human sympathetic than they should be. Each company of a chapter is able to field a mix of tactical, assault and devastator squads. And you will very rarely see an entire Space Marine force deployed in battle. It is very rare. Usually they only deploy in small versatile battle companies, and you will very rarely will you see a large force of Space Marines deployed, and that is only usually it only usually happens when the enemy must not advance because there is some serious strategic point or value to it. So usually when you see a large force deployed, it's usually around 200 to 300 Space Marines, and they're supporting vehicles, etc., etc. And that's basically the Space Marines in a quick nutshell. Near enough.
So
I'll go in.
Good.
Yeah, I was going to say I'll go into things like the genetics of the Space Marine, because they're very, as I say, they are superhuman, and I'll go into various bits and pieces as we go through. I mean, this is a long ride. We've got plenty of time to talk in depth about lore and stuff, so I'll go into it more, but that's a very, very succinct introduction to what the Space Marines are and what they're about.
What he really means is he's got a long time to educate the rest of us numbskulls on all the stuff and intricacies behind everything Warhammer 40k. So next week you will be discussing the brief introduction by the Ultramarines. Wow, I'm really messing this up. See, I need to drink more. That's what it is.
Ultramarines, yes.
Ultramarines. There we go. I can do this. Thank you and good night.
And you too.
Ultramarines, you either love them or you hate them.
And most people I know hate them because, it's the Ultramarines. That's what I get.
Yeah,
anyway.
And the writer, but we'll go into that another day.
Oh, okay. Tune in next week, folks. But before that, let's go ahead and start wrapping up this episode. So, moving on. I've lost my notes again. There we are. Awesome. Here we are. So, we don't necessarily have a mailbag this week, but we do have a brief question from our comments in the last episode. One of our commenters, Mater, one of the two, was talking about how his friend invited him to play a game of, I believe, Space Hulk last night. And he got to thinking about how they could possibly implement a version of Space Hulk into this game and what we think about that. I think there's a time and a place for games like Space Hulk, but if he's just talking about the game mechanics as they are in that game, as a mini game in Eternal Crusade, I don't see why it couldn't just be a game of its own.
But
or maybe I'm misunderstanding the question.
I mean, I don't see why you would need that in the game because you have Space Hulk.
All right.
If you get me there.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, there's no need for it, really, is there? For that kind of mechanics?
It would be limited to just one faction.
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense. And
enough.
at the end of the day, if you want to play Space Hulk, play Space Hulk. Space Hulk is cool, by the way. I love Space Hulk.
I haven't got a chance to get it yet.
Oh, get it!
I haven't heard anything good about it, so I was keeping my fingers off.
Space Hulk got really bad rap, and I don't know why. Yeah, there was faults with it, and there was some serious faults with it, but a lot of the issues have been ironed out by the developers through patching. And the fact is, a lot of people who gave that game stick didn't know what it was about.
Yeah.
All right.
And I had the board game.
Yeah, exactly. It's the board game in digital form. That's what it is. That's what it was supposed to be. And people were like, "This game isn't very good." And then you were like, "Did you play the original board game?" And they were like, "I didn't know it was a board game." And I was like, "Well, there's your problem then." Idiot.
Well, to be fair, I also didn't know that it was a board game originally. But
And frankly, it's fun. It's cool. I like it.
Okay, well, fair enough. There's that answer. So, actually, you know what? Since we're on this subject as it is, for people that gave that bad rap, I'm just putting this out there. I haven't had a chance to play Batman or Arkham Origins yet, but apparently there are certain websites like, say, Destructoid that gave that game a 3.5 out of 10.
Jim Sterling hated that game. He makes me laugh so hard. Oh,
but seriously,
word.
you're giving what is probably going to be Game of the Year a 3.5?
But honestly, I've seen a playthrough of it, and I see what Jim Sterling, because I'm a big fan of Jim Sterling, and I actually have to. I don't agree with his score, but I definitely agree with the points that he made, and I definitely wouldn't give that game. I don't give game scores anyway, but if I was to give a game, I wouldn't give that game over a 6.
I will have to look into it more myself. Do you have any definite opinion? But of the friends of mine that have played that game, they're singing its praises. And I personally loved Arkham Origins, and I'm not Origins, but City, and I'm not even really a Batman fan. So
I think the best quote I heard from that is that Jim Sterling basically said, "If you want to play Arkham City-esque game, go play Arkham City."
Nice. All right, well, let's go ahead and start moving into the closing of our show. So, moving back to our contact information, if you would like to get a hold of us, again, as we said at the top of the show, you can go to cleansepurgekill.com, which I just tried to do, and for some reason it bugged all to hell. I blame Chrome, because after a couple of refreshes, it landed perfectly, so I don't know.
Use Chrome.
I'm not using Chrome during recording, because it takes less resources than Firefox most of the time. Otherwise, you can find us at twoghammer.com, twitter.com/cpkpodcast. Make sure you follow that. Twitter.com/twoghammer. Also follow that. Facebook.com/twoghammer. YouTube.com/twoghammer. Don't forget the ENT. Rate, hate, and subscribe on iTunes. If you could do that, we would really, really appreciate that. And, again, if you would like to help out the website in any way, shape, or form, you can do so by going to twoghammer.com/audible, get your free book, your one free token, your free 30-day trial. You don't have to pay anything.
It's worth it just for a free thing, right?
Absolutely. I used my first book and I've subscribed. So
there's some really good stuff on there as well. You know, all kinds of game-related stuff, or fantasy, or sci-fi, all sorts.
There are books on there, for someone who drives around and works a lot like I do and constantly listens to podcasts. There are books on there that range anywhere from, an hour and a half to 40-plus hours. So, there you go. That's for one token. 40 hours of entertainment. Unless, of course, the book is boring as hell, in which case, I'm sorry. But, aside from that, you can find our hosts by going where, Michael?
You can follow me on Twitter at CosmicEngine99. You can go over to my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/thecosmicengine. Subscribe, watch my Eternal Crusade videos, the Astronomicon show, and you can watch my various other videos. I do videos on RPGs. I do a Star Wars: The Old Republic weekly show. I'm working on a couple of more series that I can't talk about yet because I don't know if they're going to be any good. So come hang out with me, and we can play Dawn of War and various games on Steam if you want. That'd be cool.
All right. And Ol, where can we find you?
You can find me here all week long. No, I'm not really. I'm working on making a YouTube channel, but I haven't really gotten around to it yet. So for now, I'm here.
All right, fair enough. You can catch him in the comment section after we post the episode.
Yeah.
And before...
Are you going to mention about writers?
Oh, yeah. I guess I could do that, couldn't I? I already forgot something else, too. So why not, since we're here? If you are interested in doing any work for us, whether it's about Eternal Crusade or about anything else gaming, you can send any emails along those lines to road@twonkhammer.com. I will make sure to get a hold of those as soon as I can, read whatever you have to submit for us, and of course you can also send those to sam@twonkhammer.com. That's Sam with 2 M's at twonkhammer.com.
Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in joining the Cleanse, Purge, Kill team, definitely looking for things like news writers and editorials and stuff like that. If you're interested in that kind of thing, then that'd be great.
Absolutely, I appreciate you reminding me of that. Otherwise, I'd have forgotten, and that would have been bad.
I know.
So, going along with what else I forgot, thank you to our commenters from our previous episode, which were Matter, as I said earlier, and Irish Iron Gut. That's a great name.
What a name.
That's a great name.
That is a great name.
That describes...
That's do you know, that sounds like some kind of dwarf from a fantasy novel or something. Irish Iron Gut. Brilliant. Love it.
That's a great point. Anyway, so, as we close this out, if you would like to get a hold of me in any way, shape, or form, you can, of course, go to any of those previous links that I have suggested before, send emails to that email that I mentioned just a minute ago, or stalk me on the Twitter @thatroadguy. From myself, everyone at Twonkhammer, and the crew for Cleanse, Purge, Kill, thank you for listening. And to bring us out, a quote that I just stole from the internet: "The galaxy is the Emperor's, and anyone or anything who challenges that claim is an enemy who must be destroyed."